Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of Adam Interviews, where we continue to talk about interesting things in our area, significant things in our area, and we're bringing in folks who are in the mix to talk about this stuff. And one of those people is Jason Macbride, who's joining us right now. Hi, Jason. How are you?
Doing well, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Of course. If you don't recognize his face, he is the candidate, the Republican candidate for Ontario County District Attorney. And obviously, in most of these races, I've found, Jason, we don't even hear about them because there might only be one candidate, especially in the counties surrounding Monroe County. This one got contentious.
Sure. This was a very spirited campaign from the very onset. And ultimately, it was a race that came down to 103 votes in our Republican primary. Obviously very happy and very humbled to have won the Republican primary, and also extremely proud to have gotten across the finish line with our independent line, which is the Truth and Justice line. Looking forward to the general election coming up on November 4th.
You were a member of the Ontario County District Attorney's Office. You worked under Jim Ritz. What prompted you to run against him?
Sure. I was a prosecutor in Ontario County for 10 years, and it was 10 years of amazing work. And there are a number of reasons why I decided to run, primarily because of the outpouring of support from our law enforcement community. These are folks that I worked very closely with in Geneva, Canandaigua, and throughout the county. And there was a call for action from them. And I decided to answer that call and throw my name in the ring, and here we are.
Give us a brief history. Where did you work prior to the District Attorney's Office?
Sure. My wife, Robin, and I grew up in Greece, New York. And in 2004, I started at the Monroe County District Attorney's Office. I was one of Michael C. Green's first hires. I worked there for 8 years, rising to the level of Deputy Bureau Chief of our Domestic Violence and Child Abuse Bureau. In January of 2012, a retired District Attorney, Mike Tantillo, hired me, and I started in a number of our local court jurisdictions: Canadice, Naples, Manchester, South Bristol, and also undertook a number of felony matters. And then in 2017, when Mr. Ritz became our elected district attorney, he appointed me as his first assistant. And then in 2022, I left the DA's office, and I'm currently an assistant county attorney, and I work closely with Child Protective Services, prosecute juvenile offenders, and work with our court system as it relates to pistol permits.
And I want to get into kind of how you plan to run the office should you win, and your legal philosophy and all that. I do want to at least get this out right away, because obviously, as you saw, the current district attorney, Jim Ritz, came on the show, said that he had 16 attorneys, and it's going to be down to 8 by this Friday. And that could hurt the ability to prosecute, especially the smaller cases, but even the big ones like the Nordquist case. What is your response to that, possibly coming in to lead that office?
Sure. Any good and solid prosecutor is always prepared. And when Mr. Ritz contacted me a number of weeks ago to inform me that he was going to be retiring, I immediately stepped into action. I've worked with a number of resources, most notably retired District Attorney Mike Tantillo, retired District Attorney Jim Harvey. And we have really hit the ground running as far as it relates to hiring experienced, dynamic, innovative prosecutors. Our office, when it's fully staffed, is a prosecution of 19 attorneys. And staffing issues have been an issue throughout Mr. Ritz's tenure. We're not going to have that problem the day that I start. We are already assembling an outstanding group of prosecutors who are ready to lead the front, to protect our victims, to hold offenders accountable, but in a respectful way. And so the message to Ontario County is very clear. We are going to hit the ground running, and we are going to need to roll up our sleeves together as a community And that's something that Ontario County is very used to. And the community should have the utmost confidence that we will not miss a beat.
One of the claims from Mr. Ritz is that some people have left because they felt like you had slighted them or they didn't get along with you. What's your response to that?
Sure. And that's been a common accusation throughout the campaign. And realistically, it couldn't be farther from the truth. Some of these folks I worked with, I supervised, and had excellent working relationships with them. Many of the other employees, I've never had the pleasure of interacting with them. Elections are intense at times. And sometimes folks draw lines in the sand, and that's clear that some of those folks have. But that doesn't take away from my admiration for the work that they've performed. And I certainly wish them nothing but the best in whatever they feel is best for them professionally and in their personal lives. I will never begrudge or criticize a prosecutor for doing what he or she thinks is in his or her own best interests. And I commend them for their service. And we're ready to move forward with a staff that is going to be dynamic.
Obviously, you can't predict the future, but do you think you'll have a staff that includes, let's say, more than 12, 13 attorneys when you take office?
Unequivocally, yes.
Okay. And the other allegation I want to get out of the way too, I know that the current district attorney is going to retire October 7th. He had said that you had said a homophobic slur in the office. You said that was investigated. There was no discipline, which should at least put question into someone's mind about whether that happened. I think that was your response. So, we don't have to relitigate this here. That was part of the campaign. So I was just wondering, given that we have the Nordquist case in front of us, which does involve the LGBTQ community, what is your position on that community because I'm going to ask you, I guess, personally, what do you think about that community? Because that could influence how you prosecute this case.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with that question, Adam, no doubt.
We have time.
And, what I first of all, to Sam's family, this case is my top priority. I will be personally handling this case along with another extremely experienced attorney. And I have made it a point of emphasis to follow this case very closely. I was in court for all of the suppression hearings before Judge Carley to make sure that I am current as it comes to where things are headed with regards to that case. I've also been in constant communications with various stakeholders associated with that case, victim advocates, law enforcement, the court system. I have 2 teenage kids who have a lot of friends. And my own friends who are members of that community. And one of the most rewarding aspects of living in Ontario County is it's a county of love and coming together. And one thing that separates Ontario County from most other areas is that neighborly feel. We're not too small, we're not too big, and we have a history of supporting one another in moments of adversity. And adversity is a vast understatement for the brutal and savage murder of Sam. It will not be tolerated. We will aggressively prosecute those folks in a respectful manner, and we will deliver the maximum amount of justice to Sam's family. No questions about that.
Had you been district attorney at the time, would you have gone after this as a hate crime?
Hey, Adam, that's a great question. I want to make sure that I'm careful about that. I wasn't privy to the information that Mr. Ritz and his staff had. However, I do know that Mr. Ritz and his assistants weighed that decision heavily. And I'm not going to armchair quarterback his decision. He was in the best spot possible to make that call. And I believe that he made the decision that he thought was best with the information that he had.
And I'm asking this out of ignorance because I don't know. Now that has been added to the list of charges, is that what you have to take on? Can you remove charges once you become district attorney?
It's very difficult to do that. And certainly there would be a lot of potential consequences. We're talking about delaying justice for Sam's family, also holding some of these defendants for even longer periods of time. I've worked on a number of very high complex cases alongside of Mr. Ritz, and we've had the opportunity to strategize about some of these things. And I'm confident that the charges that are in place are appropriate.
So no plans to remove any charges like the hate crime charges at this point?
No.
What inspired you? You obviously have dedicated yourself to the law in general, but you focused through much of your career on prosecution. Was there any particular event in your life or any aspect of your upbringing that had you gravitating towards that part of the law?
I appreciate that question, Adam, and it brings a big smile to my face because when I was a college intern at the University of Rochester, I had the privilege of interning at the Monroe County DA's office. And I interned with a wonderful human being by the name of Rosa Camacho, who was the coordinator of our SAFE program. And it was Stop Abuse in the Family Environment. And I had the opportunity to work with a lot of amazing folks, women and children who were experiencing a lot of turmoil. And it was the most rewarding experience that I ever participated in. And that's what motivated me to go to law school and to return home to Rochester to work with victims of domestic violence and victims of child abuse. There is no more difficult job than being a child abuse prosecutor, but there's also no more rewarding job than fighting for children and making sure that their voices are heard. And in Ontario County, we are very blessed. Our jurors believe children. And some communities, that's not the case. But in Ontario County, our jurors believe kids. And I am so happy to be a part of that and excited to get back in the ring in January to lead the fight for our kids.
When you ran, I have to assume, if memory serves me, you agree with Jim Ritz and a lot of other district attorneys, both Republican and Democrat, that the bail reform laws when it comes to cashless bail perhaps took too much discretion away from the judges. Am I right in that?
That's very fair.
Okay.
And I think that we are in a very unique spot in New York to come together. Whether you're a defense attorney, whether you're a prosecutor or a judge, we all agree that there's room for improvement. There are some folks that should not receive cash bail. And unfortunately, in years past, there are a number of folks that should not have been held on bail for petty matters. And that's where we got to the spot that we are. But we are in a very unique time to come together to find common ground on those things, because I believe all New Yorkers want safe streets. And we also want to make sure that folks are treated fairly, whether that's based upon their sexual orientation or their racial background or their socioeconomic status. Everyone wants to believe that they have a fair shot in the criminal justice system. That is something that is very dear to me and something that I will never stop appreciating.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about this. You see these cases where someone was let off, let's say, but they received cashless bail. In the past, let's say they would have had a $10,000 bail. They would have stayed in jail for a couple of days until their arraignment or preliminary hearing, but then they were let out, and we see a horrific crime repeated,
Sure.
especially with domestic violence. And you obviously say that's terrible. Like this person, especially to cool off, if I know that's probably not the appropriate term, but just like to get past whatever incident had prompted an assault or something like that. And then there's the principle of it, and you kind of touched on that, which is you have your right because you are innocent until proven guilty. And so it's a very tough position to be in, and I'm interested to see kind of like what would be your model if you were to snap your fingers and say, okay, we'll go back to what was, or is it going to be a modification? What would be your preference?
That's an excellent question, Adam, and it's something that I've given a lot of thought to. And I think that judges should have the opportunity to consider the protection of the community and the dangerousness of individuals. When you take those two factors into consideration, I think we avoid a lot of the problems that we've seen in the news recently. And I know a story specifically that you reported on concerning a gentleman who engaged in some domestic violence. There was an order of protection issued. That individual was immediately let go and got into some additional difficulties. Our victims need to understand that when they are in that moment, and this is life or death for many victims, there's a great deal of mistrust. And when they make that decision, that brave decision to contact the police to report, statistically speaking, a loved one who's committed horrific crimes against them, they're taking a giant leap of faith in the criminal justice system. And it is devastating for a victim who has undergone that sort of experience to realize that his or her offender is immediately back on the street and is putting their lives in danger. I think as New Yorkers, we can all agree that that's wrong. But we also need to take into account that there are many cases, property-related cases, where, depending on the person's unique circumstances, cash bail may not be appropriate. Perhaps it's a substance abuse issue or a mental health crisis. And we need to be mindful of those things. And there is, in my mind, Adam, a big difference between someone who has addiction issues or mental health issues versus someone that is a career criminal who puts his or her interests over the community's. That's a huge difference for me.
Yeah. One of the, and this is so interesting because I did plan to talk about this, and when I was kind of doing my research, just reading articles, getting ready for this interview, this case to me is the one that I don't know whether there's a right or wrong, and it actually involved you. It was with Jason Frederick a couple of years ago. He was accused of rape, and he was given a $40,000 cash bail. He did not post it. He ended up spending 17 months behind bars and then was found not guilty. So here I am thinking, well, rape, that's horrible. Do you just say cashless bail, show up at your next court appearance? And at the same time, looking at it from his perspective, where he was found not guilty at the end of the day and 17 months in jail. So I don't know if you've given any thought to that, like where that stands in your mind.
Sure. And, I think judges should have the opportunity to consider all of the unique factors that are associated with a particular suspect or defendant. And in Mr. Frederick's case, there were a number of factors that the judge in question appropriately took into account to hold this individual in jail. I remember that case very vividly. And that victim is a wonderful human being who suffered through a lot of trauma during her life and was sexually assaulted by someone that she trusted, and unfortunately someone that sold her drugs. And she had her day in court, and it was empowering for her, and she deserved that. I respect the jury's decision. It was an extremely difficult case. And, we live in a society where prosecutors are held to proof beyond a reasonable doubt. It's a high burden, but it's a burden that any legitimate prosecutor holds very deeply. I believe that case was handled appropriately from the judge's position. And ultimately, the jury disagreed, and he was let go. And that's, sometimes that's what the cards, give us. It's unfortunate, but that victim is in a much better spot now than she was when she came into the courtroom. She is free of substances. She's doing fantastic. She is a loving parent, and it was an honor to work with her and to support her in a traumatizing moment of her life.
And I have to assume that when it comes to a charge of rape, even in current standards, you would know better than I, you can still put a cash bail on that.
Yes.
Because it's only certain charges that are cashless. So this could have played out the same way now as it did in 2023.
100%.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
100% agree. Thankfully, the legislature has exempted a number of charges, and those would include sexual-related offenses under Penal Law Section 130. Very grateful for that as a child abuse prosecutor, and we do have the ability to be creative when it comes to keeping the community safe, protecting the rights of people accused of crimes. We have a lot more tools at our disposal to achieve that balance.
Yeah, that's interesting. Any other, it's interesting too. I'd love to get your take. We send candidates into the ring for district attorney as Republican, Democrat, kind of like sheriff too. And I've heard arguments to say that we should probably get rid of party affiliation when it comes to district attorney races. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's a lot to be said for that. During the general or the primary election, that was a sentiment that we heard every day. We're tired. Ontario County residents are tired of Republican versus Democrat, Trump versus Biden. Ontario County, again, I've said this before, Adam, it is a remarkable place to live because there's so many more things that we have in common than divide us. And I'm all for it. I mean, that's one of the main reasons why we decided to run on an independent line, because a district attorney serves all victims, whether you're a conservative or a liberal, a Republican or a conservative, regardless of your race, sexual orientation, you deserve to be treated with respect, and you deserve to have a prosecutor that is willing to fight as hard as he or she can to make sure that your rights are protected. I think there's a lot to be said for that.
When it comes to Eastview Mall, what are you going to be doing to make sure, because we've seen larceny if they steal enough, but we've seen incidents where there has been more theft within these stores. What do you plan on doing to curtail that?
I'm glad that you brought that up, because that is something that is in our plan of attack, so to speak. One of the very first items on my agenda is to sit down with our sheriff, as well as Will Wright, which is the owner of Eastview Mall, and make sure that we can put together a comprehensive plan for prevention of that sort of behavior. Two, to make sure that the district attorney's office is supporting the folks at the mall, as well as the sheriff's department, on a number of things. And that could be making sure that they have the right amount of resources, making sure that information when it comes to crime is shared with quickly, that we have all of the tools needed to aggressively prosecute folks that shoplift from our mall. That was a pillar of Mike Tantillo's regime. And in fact, when Mike hired me in 2012, he told me two things. We are hard on folks that drive drunk, and we are hard on folks that steal from Eastview Mall. And those are things that we are going to resuscitate and do an excellent job with our partners.
And by the way, you don't have to worry. I'm not going to ask you about the Fishers Fire District.
I'm actually in that district.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
All right. Well, what do you think?
Well, I could say this. We're very blessed as residents of Victor to have a number of options concerning our fire department. I have a very, very close friend who is a commissioner with the Victor Fire Department. They're working extremely hard in the event that things go a certain direction. The residents of Victor should be very confident their needs will be met, whether it's Pumpkin Hook, which is another local fire department, Fishers, or the Village of Victor. And again, I've said this repeatedly, but people want to help in Ontario County, and we're very good problem solvers in coming together in times like this, and this will be no different.
Going back to the Nordquist case, there have been certain instances, even in Monroe County, where Sandra Doyley prosecuted a case herself. Would this be one that you'd consider prosecuting yourself?
No question. The day that I start, I will be the lead prosecutor on that case. I have another prosecutor that has committed to join our office, and this is an individual with impeccable credentials, and that person will be assisting right by my side, and it will be a situation where we'll hit the ground running, work very closely with Sam's family, and make sure that family gets the justice that they deserve.
Any other key points that you'd like to make about how you're going to approach this position if you do secure it?
I think that the biggest takeaway is a prosecutor should be an excellent listener. We listen to the police, we listen to our victims, and we should listen to defense attorneys We should listen to our community. And that is something that I'm committed to. I'm committed to listening to all of our local court judges who have expressed some real frustrations. I want to understand those frustrations and work together with them to solve those issues. I also want to be able to listen to our victim advocacy agencies who are frustrated, and I want to problem solve with them. I want to listen to our law enforcement partners, these brave men and women that risk their lives every time they put in that uniform. I want to listen to their needs. But something that also gets lost in the shuffle is I also want to listen to our public defender's office and our conflict defender's office and understand the difficult jobs that they have. I think that there is a real opportunity to mend a lot of fences there so that we can receive adequate justice for victims while also taking into account their clients' difficulties and needs. And I think that that's been lost over the last short while. And it's something I'm committed to rebuilding those sorts of relationships.
We have a couple minutes left, so I'll just slip in a very specific question. We've seen a few instances now in Canandaigua in particular with pit bulls. Do you have any, I know it's almost municipal at its level here, but any thoughts on that, on where we go from a legal standpoint?
Sure. Adam, we're spot on with a lot of issues. The issues that you're bringing up coincide. I had a wonderful conversation on Sunday with our local Humane Society, which does have a great relationship with law enforcement. So we're already in the works as far as tackling what that looks like, whether it's enforcement, whether it's community awareness. That is something that is high on my priority list. So, we'll tackle that too.
All right. Jason Macbride, anything else that you'd like to add before we close this out?
I just want to take the opportunity to wish Mr. Ritz a wonderful retirement. It's well-deserved for him, his wife, and his son. I really hope that he will be able to enjoy his family and hobbies. And as we move forward between now and the election, this is a real opportunity for Ontario County to come together and to support one another, roll up our sleeves and get this hard work done. And I'm asking for our county's support. We're going to support Jim in his retirement. And I hope that Ontario County can support the current DA's office as well as the one starting on January 1st, because we're all in this together. It's something that I'm committed to working hard for and earning everyone's trust every single day. I know that when I enter that courthouse, I have to re-earn everyone's trust day by day. And I just hope that we can come together to honor Mr. Ritz and rally behind myself and my team so that we can do the work that needs to be done.
Jason, thank you so much for taking the time and for driving up to Rochester for this interview. I
appreciate it. I appreciate the tour of your wonderful facility here. The historical architecture was really special, and this state-of-the-art studio that you have here is really cool. I think it resonates with a lot of people, and I'm very excited for you and this new opportunity for you. So
we didn't even show you the haunted room. So
okay, maybe next time. Thanks for having me, Adam.
Thank you, Jason. Jason Macbride, he is the Republican nominee for the Ontario County District Attorney's Office. Should he win, he will be taking over the staff there, having been a prosecutor in that office for many years. I want to thank him for coming in and talking with us today, and I want to thank you for watching this latest edition of Adam Interviews. And if you haven't yet, tell your friends, tell your family about the Rochester streaming app. In fact, you can tell your people who aren't your friends. It doesn't matter. Smart TV goes right on there for free. We so appreciate your support. Take care.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.